Greetings, peeps of the interwebs. Jake here, and with me on this new episode of Comic Conversations is my special guest, Erisa Neptune.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. It's a nice day.
Yeah. So, before we get into the main topic at hand, I guess just let the viewers kind of know your background with comics, like how you got on into comics, some of your favorite comic characters or storylines.
Okay, so pretty much I got into comics just a bit later than most of the people on Comics Amino who were saying, like, I got into comics when I was 4 years old.
Yeah.
It's not the same for me.
I mean,
so pretty much when I was smaller, though, it wasn't really you were into comics. Oh, you like superheroes.
Yeah.
Instead of comics. There wasn't like that connection between the two.
Yeah.
So I didn't know really comics existed. So when I was smaller, it kind of started with the Batman TV show, not the Batman the Animated Series. I would kind of stay up past my bedtime, and I would just watch it, and like, oh, I love all this action. And my mom would be like, go to bed. So I would love it, and then for a while, I would keep watching Batman. But then the only thing was, as I got older, just a tad older, I kind of liked Snow White and Thomas the Train just a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I had that whole phase, but it wasn't till many, many years later, I'm going through Netflix and I see Justice League Unlimited, and I go,
fantastic show.
Yeah, so I see that and I go, oh, I recognize, Batman, Superman, a little bit of Wonder Woman. But then it's unlimited, so you see like hundreds of characters behind them. I go, what is this?
Yeah, get to see like Martian Manhunter, Aquaman, Green Arrow, Black Canary, all these other kind of tertiary characters.
Exactly, I didn't know who any of these people were. So it was kind of a weird twist to me.
Yeah.
So I ended up watching Justice League Unlimited, and I actually love it. I really got into the show, even though I was an older kid watching this that was probably made for 7-year-olds.
No, there is no shame. Which, cause I think because I think when Justice League Unlimited came out, I think it was around like 2000, 2001. So I was only like 9 or 10, I think, when that show came out. And of course, again, since I grew up in the 90s, because I think I'm a little bit older than you. I grew up with like Batman the Animated Series, this 90s animated Spider-Man and X-Men series, along with a few of the other Marvel animated series that didn't last as long. And then, of course, Justice League Unlimited, which was sort of a continuation of like the Superman, Batman world, because I think Bruce Timm was involved.
Yeah.
And that was also kind of my... Because obviously I was familiar with Superman and Batman from the old movies from the 70s and 80s. But then, like, again, Justice League Unlimited, I'm kind of like, whoa, this guy with the bow and arrow? Green Arrow? What's this guy do? Or all these other characters. And I'm like, oh, I really like that guy. I like her and them. And sometimes there are episodes where I'm like, I want to know more about these characters. But since they weren't a part of the main, lineup of Justice League, they'd only pop up here and there. So I do think that, like, all those shows, again, whether it was like the Spider-Man, X-Men, Justice League, or Batman, that's kind of what a lot of people... That was like their introduction to these
comics.
Comics. Because that's how I became familiar.
I was actually going to make a post about that, how it's called the TV shows that started it all.
They really were. Like, that's basic. Like, I would argue that's what got people like my age and younger, and people, maybe even people who grew up in the like late 80s. That really was our introduction to, like, or I guess main introduction to like the comic world. And then when, like, the comic boom started happening, like the X-Men movies and Spider-Man, we're like, oh, Spider-Man, he's fighting Green Goblin, gotcha, because that's his main enemy. Or Batman fighting the Joker. We're like, obviously, who else would it be?
Yeah, so when I was going in, I'm thinking this is for little kids, and I was like, nah, I don't care.
Yeah.
So I started watching more of the shows, and it wasn't until I actually got to the first Justice League show last. So I kind of watched it all in the wrong order.
Yeah.
But I still liked it.
Yeah.
And then I started doing more research about these characters, and then I loved The Flash from the shows. So I go on and I walk down to the comic book store, which I found out there was one down the street from me the whole time.
Oh, perfect.
I know. I walked there and I get The Flash, which was New 52, and it was issue 11. And I start reading it, and I love it, and I go and I watch and I read more of this stuff, and then I'm like, there's a whole world of comics out there that's waiting for me, which kind of goes into how I got onto the app. I thought Comics Amino was an app to buy comics. So I'm clicking, and then I go into the app. My internet was slow at the time, so I couldn't really see the pictures for the description. And I'm on the app, and I go, where's the button to buy stuff? Where can I do this? It didn't make any sense. I go into the chat, and I realize, oh, geez, all these people are posting stuff about comics. And I go, oh, this is great. I can actually say all my stuff that I love. Wish the most, and write about it in this one place. So that's how I pretty much got on here. Was an accident, completely.
That's awesome. I think it would have been cooler though if, like, when you joined the app, you were going to people's profiles. It's like, how do I buy you? What are you about?
That would have been fun. Like, can I buy the Flash pack, sir?
They're like trying to, because I know, like, when people first join the, Comics Amino, it's like, oh, you should follow the curators. Like, going to the curators is like, Miss America, why won't you get in my cart? I'm trying to buy you. I want to know more about your character.
Exactly, that's funny. Okay, so then I still love the Flash, Wally West, though. He's my favorite superhero of all time.
Yeah, so that's, because that was actually something that I didn't pick up on, because again, like, when I first watched Justice League, I had no idea there were multiple Flashes, so...
Me neither.
And at the time, that was, Wally West was the Flash from, I think it was,
the 80s?
Yeah, like late 80s, mid to late 80s, up until New 52, he was the Flash. So, when I started reading, like, actually reading the comics... I was still kind of like, huh, this is the same guy, right? And so my friends who, were, comic readers were like, no, that's Barry Allen. I'm like, why are there two Flashes? And then, of course, that went into a whole other conversation. And then, because honestly, I didn't start to really dive into reading comics until I was, like, in my early 20s. Like, I was obviously, I was obviously familiar with, comics just from the movies and TV shows and stuff like that, and just from talking to friends and other people, but for the longest time I actually stayed away from the superhero comics just because I didn't know where to start, since there's basically all the heroes have 50 plus years of history, until finally I just kind of was like, screw it, I'm just gonna dive right in. But yeah, that was a big mind-blowing moment for me, because I'm just kind of like, there's more than one Flash and there's been more than one Batman. What?
Honestly, I didn't even know who Barry Allen was till later.
Yeah. So I don't really know if I have a preference between Barry and Wally. I've read more comics with Barry, but I grew up more with Wally, so I don't know, it's kind of like maybe time of day for me where I have a preference, but...
I don't know. I like Barry Allen. I just like Wally West a bit more, but the only thing is, I feel like they're kind of making more... Barry Allen, what Wally West was. They even changed his costume to look like Wally West.
Yeah.
And then there's Barry Allen. They have the whole thing of Barry Allen being the funny guy in the group, and I always thought that was kind of Wally's role.
Yeah.
It fit him, because he was a former sidekick. The sidekicks are the ones that are kind of, hey, they're up there, and they're all the funny ones that crack jokes. And I'm thinking, Barry Allen could crack jokes, just... not every single time he opens his mouth. That's great. Like they have in DCEU right now. He's the big funny guy in the joke, and I'm thinking that it's kind of stealing from Wally West.
Yeah.
It's kind of throwing him some shade there.
I was actually kind of half expecting him to go with Wally West for the Flash in the DCEU, just because Barry Allen is the Flash in the TV show and it's so popular. And I'm like, well, that'll also be less confusing, so that way... Because again, the vast majority of people aren't savvy with the comics, so they're just kind of like, yeah, Barry Allen is the only Flash. So then of course, I guess on the flip side, if they had done Wally West, they'd be like, whoa, who's this guy? And then people like us would have to be in the audience being like, actually, there's more than one Flash. There's Wally West, there's Barry Allen. And then they'd just be like, okay, you know what, I'm just going to walk out of the theater and I'm just not even going to bother with this movie. There's just way too much information to absorb. I don't have time for this.
Yes. I would actually be screaming in the theater if I see Wally West up there on the DVD. They'd be like, who's this weird person just screaming in the theater? I go, it's Wally West! It's Wally West!
Well, what if in the Flash movie he's going through the Speed Force and then another speedster like kind of runs past him and we recognize it's Wally and they just kind of like nod at each other. Like I think that would be really cool. So that way it's like, oh man, it's possible that Wally and all the other speedsters could come into the DCEU. Like maybe in the
that'd be really epic.
Yeah. Because again, it would be a nice nod to like the comic readers who are like, what? Was that Wally? And you know, non-comic fans just like, oh, what's going on? Where's another speedster guy?
That would be awesome. I'd be like, oh geez, let's say they get Bart in there too. That'd be funny.
Oh yeah. That's when you're just like throwing your popcorn and drinks at the screen. You're like, yes, more speedsters.
It's so funny, like the difference between us and then our other friends or family members that aren't really into comics. It's just funny to see their reactions versus mine.
Yeah, because again, there have been times where I've been in a theater, or even like having a discussion about some of these comic movies and TV shows, and you know, people who, you know, friends and family who are non-comic readers, like, yeah, that was a really good movie. I'm like, no, it wasn't. It's so off from the character from the comics. And they're like, well, how so? Sit down. I'm gonna go on like a good 20-minute like conversation on why the movie sucks compared to the comics. So, brace yourself.
I have done that before. I had an argument with my friend, and I ended up bringing some comics to school just to show them.
Yeah.
So you see how this person acts different? Okay, Superman acts like this, usually.
Yeah.
Not this one. That was funny to me, but they go, oh, Vanessa, you're going on. Oh, no. Dang it. Are you able to cut that out?
Yeah, I can probably cut that out.
I accidentally said my name. Alright, I'll stop. But yeah, I would go on and just talk about all the comic stuff and the differences to my friends, and they just go, you're nerding out on us again.
Yeah.
It truly is funny. So, let's go into the Mortal Meeting Challenge now.
Okay, yeah. So
I thought it was a pretty interesting and unique challenge that was created on Comics Amino.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I loved it, and I even saw a handful of people participating in it. Thought it was great. Shout out to Rogue Pride for that, by the way. Nice challenge. We love it. So, I was thinking maybe we can do our own little take on the Mortal Meeting Challenge and participate in it here. Okay.
So I'll let you start off since you're the guest. And you were gonna go with the DC character, and then I'll go with the Marvel character since you're a bit more familiar with DC.
Yeah. So basically, the Mortal Meeting Challenge had pretty much 3 main parts to it. The first focus was on our immortal characters that we love so much, with our first question being, is immortality a curse? What do you think? Yes or no?
Ugh.
Would you want to be immortal?
Like, I think it'd be cool at first, just because I'm a big history person. So I think it'd be cool to, like, just observe how, you know, like, again, like, say, like, I was born, like, say Wonder Woman, like, how she was, you know, she kind of started in the man's world in World War I, and then she's seen how society and cultures around the world have progressed since, you know, the early 1900s to modern day. That fascinates me. So I think in that aspect, I think it'd be cool to be immortal. But then I feel like that'd be the only benefit, because then it's like every time I befriend someone or, you know, want to have a relationship with someone, it's kind of like, well, this will be good for a few years, and then you're gonna die, and then I'm still gonna be alive, and I'm gonna get depressed for a really long time. So overall, I would say it's a curse, but again, just the history nerd in me is just kind of like, oh, the history I could observe, yes.
Yeah, so I would say it honestly depends, really.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's some benefits that come with it, but then there's, like, that big emotional burden, knowing that you're gonna die, and I'm gonna just live through everything. And it kind of make me want to not be friends with people. I feel like I get really antisocial.
Yeah, exactly, because you're just too afraid to get emotionally attached to people.
Yeah. But, like, these are all assumptions that we're like, what if we were superheroes and we had big responsibilities to uphold? That'd be a different story.
That is true.
Which kind of leads into our next question. the impact that immortality has on our heroes. So here's where we pick our different heroes that we got. So, a hero that's immortal. I would probably go with Superman. I mean, he's seemingly immortal as long as he has some access to yellow sun. Yeah. He doesn't age.
Yeah.
So I would go with Superman.
I think I'll go with Thor, just because I like, he's not only one of my favorite Marvel characters, but I also like, again, liking history, I like mythology, in particular Norse mythology, so that's my pick.
Okay, so how would immortality affect Thor? How does it affect him right now?
Well, basically being, an immortal god, he's very kind of, I don't know, I feel like he's, especially like in his younger days, like I think like kind of the same way the movie did it is, before he became worthy to wield Mjolnir, he was very hot-headed, he was kind of arrogant, and so basically he'd just make rash decisions. He's like, I'm a god, I can charge into battle and take out a whole bunch of frost trolls or whatever, and since I'm more or less immortal, I can't die. And so I think what I really liked about that aspect of his storyline from the comics and in the movie is, basically his father's kind of like, hey, look, I know we're more or less immortal, but eventually I have to pass, I'll pass on, and you're gonna have to take over. So you can't take over in the current state you're in now. You'd just be a terrible, terrible ruler. And that's when he takes it, and I like how he took his powers away, basically, and exiled him to Earth to be like, look, get some perspective, kind of see the way the world works as, like, just a low-level human, and not, like, as a way of kind of, like, just like, oh, those puny humans, you gotta live with them, but more, again, just to show him perspective, because it's like, yeah, these normal humans only live, like, a very short, like, time period, so if you're living the same way they would, you're gonna be a bit more cautious, you're gonna be a bit, and humble them, so I think that's what I really liked about why I like Thor as a character, because again, he went from basically the very top, being a god, to a human, and then that's when he kind of learned, oh, okay, life isn't just about, going into battle, fighting for the sake of fighting, and, having a big celebration afterwards where we just drink and, have a lot of fun.
Yeah, Thor would definitely need to be more cautious, especially in that 2 scenes where he got hit with a car.
Yeah.
Like, watch out, dude, come on. Okay, so mine was Superman. I think Superman, he kind of, with his immortality comes him, he can just dive right into the danger, honestly. Go right into the fire, come out and saving people, and it's a big part of what makes him Superman is he can do stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think that, honestly, Superman with his powers, and he's also a really good person. Yeah. His immortality has a big part of who he is and makes him up. I mean, lots of people have even said that if Superman didn't have their powers, I really wouldn't want to read about him. Which I can't say I wouldn't. I would say I probably wouldn't read about him too. It's like Superman, just the Clark Kent stuff.
See, in a way, I was actually, because I think it was towards the end of New 52 when Superman, like, he didn't get his powers completely taken away, but he was very depowered. Because I'm actually not a huge Superman fan because of he's just so powerful. It's hard to write a good, compelling story about him. But when I heard that, I forget who the writer was at the time, like, basically depowered him, like, ooh, you've piqued my interest. I want to see what a depowered Superman is like in the current world of the DC universe, where, normally if he was fighting even someone like Doomsday, he's kind of like, it's going to be hard for him, but he can still, like, I don't think he has to worry that much just because he's so absurdly powerful. But a depowered Superman's like, ooh, I mean, I still got to fight him because it's basically my duty as a hero, but I don't know if I'm going to make it out of this alive.
Exactly. He can't, Superman, this time, you can't just go in and come out without a scratch.
Yeah.
So, how would they change if he suddenly became mortal? That'd be a big problem for Superman, I would think, because he would still, I think Superman, usually how I know him as, he's kind of like the good-hearted person who would still try to help as much as he can.
Oh, for sure.
Even if he doesn't have his powers. So I'm thinking, even though he wouldn't have his powers, it kind of be a letdown for him.
Yeah.
Knowing that he can't save everybody. if there's a fire going on in, let's say, an orphanage, he has to trust that the other resources will be able to come and get them out.
Yeah.
I think for a while it's going to be a real big pressure on him.
Yeah, like, I imagine it would just be a huge... Because, like, again, like, let's just say that, like, he, like, they are able to put out that fire and save, you know, the children or something like that, and there aren't even any casualties, but, like, they still have to be put in the hospital or something. He would feel incredibly guilty because he's like, if I only had my powers, they wouldn't even have to be in the hospital right now. Like, I could have just, you know, zoomed right in there, saved them, and they'd be fine. But in a way, I feel like that would kind of motivate him even more to kind of be the best that he can without his powers. So I think in a way, Superman, the only thing that would change is the fact that he doesn't have powers, but he's still morally the same character, and would still try to do his utmost to do whatever he can to be a hero.
Yeah, that's Superman. He's pretty much the makeup of a hero. Quote-unquote perfect hero, which is kind of what they portrayed him to be, especially in the TV shows that they had.
Yeah.
So what about Thor? How would Thor change? Well, we saw that in the movie.
Yeah, and again, I think initially he'd be he'd probably be a little like, I don't know. I think his bravado might kind of take over for a little bit. Like, you know, again, like, say he just walks into a bar and someone picks a fight with him. Since he's a god, he'd kind of be like, "Do you know who you're talking to? I'm like a god." But since he's not immortal, you know, someone could easily beat him up, and then he's kind of like, "Oh, right, I'm human." So I think it would take him a little bit to get used to it, but I think after a while, you know, again, whether it's like, you know, a few days, weeks, or whatever, he would kind of be a bit more like Superman, where he's like, "Okay, don't have my powers. I still want to help people, but I just have to be a bit." I think in a way he would actually be become a lot more again, intelligent with the way he handles you know, again, fighting villains and stuff like that, because he doesn't come from that humble beginnings like Superman, which is the key element to him, just his character and his origins, whereas Thor grew up as the son of a god in a very regal environment. So again, he has that kind of egotistical bravado to him, and that's why I think it would actually be beneficial to a point for him to kind of, again, just kind of like be humbled for a little bit, so that way he can kind of approach things differently, rather than, again, just kind of being like, I got this, guys, because I'm you know, the son of Odin, so let me just...
I'm the mighty Thor.
Yeah, exactly, where he just, you know, kind of comes in like a manly man. It's just kind of like, I got this, guys, stand aside.
Yeah, so their attitudes, Superman and Thor's, their attitudes they are pretty different at first.
Yeah.
In comparison. Because it's Thor thinking, you can't mess with me, I'm the almighty god, and Superman, who kind of came from a farm in the middle of Kansas, but he's going out and wanting to help people at first, and then realizing he can't. He knows before that he has to do everything as a normal person, because he kind of lived that double life for a while.
Yeah.
That'd be a big difference between the two.
Oh, for sure. Although it kind of makes me wonder, I think it'd be kind of cool to just see, like, maybe a what-if story where that does happen to Superman, and then he's kind of like, oh, man, how do I fight crime? And he's like, well, Batman does it. And then he starts, like, I don't know, making up, like, his own kind of, not like dressing as a bat, but, like, kind of makes his own costume and starts being a vigilante. I think that'd be kind of like a cool, like, 6-issue, you know, series or something like that.
That'd be awesome.
Just to see, like, a different way for Superman to kind of be a hero, but, yeah, again, knowing Batman for so long, he's like, well, I've learned a few things from Batman, so let me put that to good use.
Yeah, definitely. There's the big difference. If they suddenly lose his powers, he loses his powers, they're both going to have a big change, which I think is pretty much I really like this challenge. I think it was great.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of the big thinking that they have us doing that I really was drawn into, which is why I decided that we should talk about it today.
Yeah, again, it's definitely one of those posts that kind of makes you think rather than, and not to, like, talk badly about other challenges and stuff like that, because all of them are very creative and fun and unique and stuff like that. But I don't know, I typically like the ones, you know, whether they're a challenge or just posts in general that kind of make you think of, like, just again things like this where it's like, what if this hero became like mortal and didn't have all their powers or something like that? Because again, it kind of forces you to change your perspective on how that character would be, how they would interact with the world.
Yeah, and then we have our mortal characters. That let's see what would happen to them if they suddenly became immortal, knowing nothing can happen to them. I'm gonna pick. How about the one we were just talking about, Batman? Let's go with him.
I think I'm going to go with Punisher, because I think that would be a very terrifying, but also interesting dynamic to see him if, again, he was immortal and couldn't be killed.
Oh, yes. All the gun violence there is there. Alright. Let's talk about that. How would Batman change if he was immortal? Ooh, Batman being immortal, that's just a big step there. Considering he's one of the superheroes that around him, he's the one without powers.
Yeah.
And he has to just go, oh yeah, bye everyone who's going off flying and on your Green Lantern rings. I have no powers. So let's say Batman did become immortal. I think since he would have to live the rest of his days being the Cape Crusader, he might just continue doing that. Because he wouldn't need it to pass down the mantle if he could always be there, though.
Yeah. In a way, I think it might make him a little sloppier, though, because, again, the whole reason that Batman is so efficient is because he is mortal. Like, he knows that he can die at any moment. So he has to use his brain to basically outthink whoever he's fighting, whether it be just low-level street thugs or bigger villains like within his rogues galleries, or even cosmic threats like Darkseid. He always has to try to find a way to outthink them, so that way he minimizes the amount of damage that enemy can do not only to himself but to others. Whereas if Batman is immortal, like I think he would still fundamentally stay about the same. And I think he would go about fighting crime in the same way, but I think after a while, he might get a little lazier because he's like, well, I mean, I can do this a little differently because I don't have to worry about someone shooting me in the face and killing me because I can't die now.
He wouldn't have to dodge things as much. It would definitely be a big difference of also the villains he would take on. I mean, if he could, he'll just walk right up to the Joker and just handcuff him if he wanted to because he knows he's not going to do anything to him.
Exactly. Which that's actually another thing.
That would completely change whole Batman's, persona and everything about him, I think. Just the way he fights and the way he goes out about the problems.
Although, do you think that would make... Because I don't know if that would, maybe make the Joker and his rivalry, better or worse. Because at the same time, I think it could kind of discourage the Joker from trying to get to beat Batman and kind of beat him down because he's immortal, but at the same time, the Joker being the sadistic person he is kind of like, hey, you're gonna live forever, so the whole time I'm still alive, I'm gonna make your life as awful as possible. I'm gonna hurt literally everyone I can that's even remotely close to you and hurt just literally anybody, because then you'll have to live with that for the rest of your life.
Yeah, the Joker would do that. He'd also probably try to find the best way to find out how to take away Batman's power.
Yeah.
However instance he became immortal, the Joker would find some way to strip that from him.
So yeah, that's another thing that I think would be really interesting to see their dynamic play out if, again, Batman did become immortal. How it would change, or if it would change at all, if the Joker would be like, look, I don't care if you're immortal, I'm still going to do the same thing that I do. So... comic book writers, if you're listening, maybe do some cool what if stories on these ideas.
Definitely.
Because I'm gonna.
Would the Joker still go after and pursue trying to destroy Batman, or maybe he'll just kind of lay down and go, I can't take this anymore. He's never gonna go away.
Yeah, I'll pick a fight with Green Arrow. He's still mortal, right?
True. It may change. It wouldn't be just the Batman and the Joker anymore, being the two biggest hero and villains out there.
Yeah.
That would be a big stretch. I would really love to see that. So that's going to be really cool if they do come out with a story like that. I'm the first one lining up to read it.
Yeah, so again, I'm going to entertain the absurd notion that comic book writers are listening to this and they're just kind of like, yes, give me the ideas so I can write it. So I think again, it'd be interesting to see the Punisher just because he's already a broken man. Like, honestly, like the whole, like, he doesn't really. I think he doesn't really have that fear of death because he's kind of like, well, hey, if I die, then I'll just be reunited with my family.
Yes.
So I think it'd be interesting to see that, whether he would just become even more cold and heartless and just literally go on a killing rampage against anyone and everyone, whether it be just, again, like mafia members, street thugs, or again, maybe even bigger threats that he normally wouldn't go after because he's a normal human and has to worry about death. But I think that would just be a crazy... I don't know if it would necessarily make a good story, because I feel like it would just be over-the-top violence, Punisher just going from place to place, shooting up the whole building or wherever the bad guys are. Which would be cool. It'd be cool for like maybe a couple issues, but then after that, the novelty of... Yeah, like the novelty would kind of wear off. But I think the more interesting thing is, I do wonder if it would affect him at all, because at this point, is he already too far gone to where... yeah, again, if he did become immortal, would he just be like, oh god, now I gotta live with this even longer? The fact that, you know, I have to live with... I watch my family die, and, you know... Or would he, again, just become more of a cold-hearted killing machine against bad guys and whoever else he comes across? I think that'd just be an interesting... I think that would be the more interesting way to go about it, if that did become a storyline where, again, he's trying to... I don't know, like, maybe redeem himself or something like that, because he's, again, already so broken, and the fact that, like, if he does die, it's not necessarily the worst thing for him, because he's done what he could in his own kind of twisted way of, like, cleaning up the streets and doing good for the world.
So what if, let's say, another what if, here we go, everyone was suddenly immortal, everyone on Earth. Would there really be a reason for the superheroes and the villains to exist, though? So, because villains, lots of villains, their big goal, they want to do as much harm as they can.
Yeah.
They want to go kill people, and then the heroes want to go save them, but if everyone's immortal, what's their point of existing?
I actually think it would be utter chaos, because, again, like, it's one thing to have villains and heroes going at it, you know, fighting each other for whatever their personal reasons are. But then you would have normal civilians who are like, well, I can't die, I can be a hero too, or I can be a villain, or they would just... I just feel like a lot of people would just start fighting each other because they can't die, and they're just kind of like, hey, you want to just, like, fight because I don't like your face, and you, like, insulted me or something. And then they'd just be fighting for, like, for all eternity. So I think it would be utter chaos if everyone just simultaneously became immortal on the entire planet.
Yeah, everyone would think, I have powers now, I can go out and do whatever I want. And then a lot of our heroes that we have that came out, they came out because there was a lot of death in their life.
Exactly. So it almost, or I guess, like, if everyone was immortal before they, again, like, say before Batman became Batman, he never would have become Batman, and so many other heroes, because again, the whole motivation is, like you said, you know, someone close to him died, with a family member or something like that. So it's like, without that death, they just be like a normal person, more or less.
Yeah, it goes with, like, the saying, you can't have life without death. There would pretty much be no value to it.
Yeah.
Value to life. You know, there's nothing you can't lose. And even if it is just regular villains, you know, like bank robbers that the heroes would have to fight, I mean, if someone stole something for you, you're going to have all eternity and time to get that back.
Yeah.
So I think if everyone became immortal, there would be really chaos, one, and there would be no point for our heroes and villains to exist. Everyone would probably just use that immortality to their own advantage.
Oh, most definitely. But yeah, I do think that'd still be, I don't know, still an interesting thing to think about, though. Because again, maybe if everyone was immortal, then maybe things would be, I don't know, I'm sure someone could make the argument that there wouldn't be things wouldn't be as chaotic, because again, it's just kind of like, well, we can't do anything to each other, so might as well just be friends and get along to make our eternity, tolerable or something like that.
Yeah, and essentially, the whole world, as we said, is immortality a curse? Would it be a curse on the entire world if everyone was immortal?
Let us know your thoughts in the comment section, viewers. Because I'd be curious
would
to
see... Would it be a...
Huh?
Oh, I was asking, would it be a curse?
Yeah.
Just repeat it.
I'd be curious to see what the rest of the people in the community think about this topic.
Yeah, and they can still participate in the Mortal Meaning Challenge if they want. No woman.
Yeah, feel free. Again, it was a great challenge, and again, it's a great idea to kind of look at a different perspective on a hero or a villain.
To keep you thinking about what would happen in the what ifs, it's pretty good and makes you do more research about your hero as well.
Oh, for sure.
Speaking of heroes, let's go into the Wonder Woman movie. I loved it.
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. By far the best DC movie. Not that the bar is super high, because even though I love Man of Steel, I would say that Wonder Woman is still a much better movie.
Yes, it was better. I mean, if it's not obvious with my profile picture that we have on Comics Amino, Wonder Woman is one of my favorite superheroes ever, and I was so glad when it came out and I'm watching it, and I go, oh, please tell me DCU is going to do good by Wonder Woman, because with their record so far, they weren't doing so good, especially with Batman versus Superman.
Yeah, like that. And again, not knocking the people who liked it, it's just for me, it didn't work for me. And I was still very apprehensive going into Wonder Woman because, again, Batman v Superman was kind of a letdown. Suicide Squad, even though I overall enjoyed it, it's still not a very good movie. I was kind of like, ooh, is Wonder Woman gonna be any good? And this is a movie that needed to succeed for so many different reasons, not just for the studio to kind of bring faith back that the DCU can work, but also because, for whatever reason, the kind of Hollywood system is kind of broken, because regardless of how many bad Batman and Superman movies we've got, and we'll probably continue to get, they're still going to make more Batman and Superman movies. However, if Wonder Woman had failed, then the studios would be like, oh, well, I guess no one wants to see a Wonder Woman movie. It's like, no, it's because you didn't make a good Wonder Woman movie, you idiots. But the fact that it did succeed, then, again, that just is such a good sign for female-led superhero movies. It's potentially a good sign for the DCEU. And again, say 20 years from now, they'll reboot Wonder Woman again, but they'll be like, okay, we have potential to make a lot of profit off of it because the first Wonder Woman series of movies did so well.
Yeah, it's her first big screen movie, and it really made lots of people start to get into Wonder Woman, which was great because the movie was a big success.
Yeah. And honestly, I think it was not only a good comic book movie, superhero movie, it was a good origin movie, it's also just a really good movie. I thought the writing was really good, the acting was really spot on with a lot of the cast members, and especially the relationship between Steve Trevor and Diana. I really felt like they
good chemistry in that movie.
Yeah,
I liked it.
And that's one thing that I think is missing from a lot of comic book movies, is they just have that kind of generic love interest thrown in there. They're kind of like, oh yeah, that's the love interest, but they don't really have much chemistry, or even if they have chemistry, it just kind of seems like it's shoehorned in there for the sake of that hero having a love interest. Whereas in Wonder Woman, I believed they really had a connection with each other, and when Steve told her that he loved her, spoilers, by the way, for whatever reason you haven't seen Wonder Woman, and then he flies off to sacrifice himself and blows up in the plane, it makes it so much more impactful. Again, when she's processing all that, just makes it so much more impactful because you actually believed their chemistry and their relationship with each other.
Yeah, and I actually thought it was really good acting on her part, because I actually really felt that when she was on the ground and she was about to be, pretty much beaten up by Ares.
Yeah.
She started really crying over Steve, and I go, oh my gosh, I really felt that right here, versus, which this was my opinion on the Lois Lane and, Superman thing. I felt like there wasn't that magic that they really had. Which, if you look at the old Christopher Reeve movies, you have, it's kind of magical. They have their little first fight together.
Yeah.
And I felt like before the DCEU wasn't really putting that out there, but with Wonder Woman, I really felt that chemistry between the love interest.
Yeah. And honestly, like, some of my favorite parts about the movie, like, don't get me wrong, like, the action sequences were fantastic, especially the whole trench scene was just absolutely amazing. But just the small human moments, like, I love that scene where she tries ice cream for the first time. Like, her reaction, I just thought was so genuine. Like, I don't know, it really felt like that was her first time trying ice cream, and I know it's kind of a weird scene to kind of be like, that's one of my favorite scenes in a big blockbuster superhero movie. But in a way, it was kind of refreshing for me, because obviously, you know, regardless of what character we're watching these movies on, there's going to be a big spectacle. They're fighting someone, the bad guy, for whatever reason. But we don't get enough character, like, again, the little character moments to make you really resonate and kind of feel for that particular superhero or character that you're, you know, watching on the screen. So when she had those moments, or like when she sees like the baby for the first time, she's kind of like, oh my god, a baby! I really like those moments, because it just shows how, again, even though she's this immortal demigoddess, she's still very much human.
Yeah, and I think there's kind of an advantage with the Wonder Woman, because it is her exploring the world for the first time. So you get all those kind of moments when she kind of discovers stuff.
Yeah.
Which, with the other characters that we have in the DCU so far, I mean, you don't really get all those moments, really.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the advantage Wonder Woman had, but I really think they did a good job on that part, though.
Oh, most
kind
definitely.
of making it all work. It fit perfectly.
Yeah, and yeah, again, the score I thought was fantastic, because I'm a big music person, and I love when movies have a very good kind of distinct score, which is one thing that I'll that's been missing from a lot of the Marvel movies up until here more recently. Is I can't remember anything about the score for like over half the Marvel movies, whereas the DC movies, even the not so good ones, like Batman v Superman, still had a very distinct score that really stood out to me. Like, just Wonder Woman's theme alone, like, I love the scene when that music starts playing in Batman v Superman, because that was one of my favorite parts about the movie, is when Wonder Woman shows up, and that kind of was like, okay, I really liked her in a not-so-good movie, so hopefully that means her movie will be amazing, and it was.
I really like the theme song that they had. They did a really good job on that part. It's really catchy.
Yeah, like,
after seeing the movie, I had some of my friends trying to go home and they're humming the movie. It was pretty.
Yeah, like,
humming the theme song.
That's like the kind of music that I would like put in my CD player in my car and just like drive down the road with my windows down, just blaring like the Wonder Woman theme.
That's fun.
Yeah. So I don't know, maybe that would work, and people would be like, "Oh man, that guy's gonna like beat us up or something. He's playing the Wonder Woman theme."
I liked how they had a plot twist, though, sort of, with Ares in the movie. They had us the entire time through the movie thinking one guy was Ares, and then it turned out some other person was. I honestly didn't see that one coming.
I saw it coming, but I still think they did it well. And again, like, both actors, Danny Houston, who played the German general whose name I forget, and then David Thewlis, who played Ares, they're fantastic actors, and I actually wish we could have... That was really my only kind of nitpick with the movie, is the villains weren't very strong, and DC has great villains, but that's really just a minor nitpick for me, because like everything else in the movie I thought was fantastic. I just wish we could have gotten a little bit more for from those villains. Although I do understand, like, I think they gave at least enough background information to Ares to where you're like, okay, I kind of get like where he's coming from, why he's doing what he's doing, because again, even though I like the Marvel movies, I like pretty much all of them to varying degrees. Pretty much all the bad guys are like, haha, I'm the bad guy because I'm the bad guy, so I'm gonna blow something up, or I'm gonna kidnap your girlfriend or something, and it's like, what? Why are they doing this? I don't know, it just doesn't really intrigue me as much as, like, a good, compelling villain. But I still, again, I still like the little twist. And again, I still like when, like that moment when Wonder Woman defeats the general, and she's kind of like, what's going on here? Like, why are they still fighting? It should be over. And then, of course, that's when, Ares shows up. It's kind of like, oh, yeah, no, that's the wrong guy. He was just another one of my little puppets.
Yeah, that's why I liked how they had that whole Wonder Woman's realization into the new world from pretty much beginning to end, and it went through the whole movie, and that was her internal conflict that she had to deal with, knowing that these people can't be the cause of it. It's all Ares. It's all Ares.
Yeah.
That's what she was thinking, only to find out that it wasn't. It was the people themselves. And she really wanted to believe that man's world was filled with good people.
Yeah. And again, that's what I loved, what made the scene very powerful when Steve is telling her. He's kind of like, hey, look, maybe it isn't Ares. Maybe we humans are just terrible people. We don't deserve to be saved. But I still like the fact, because again, it very, very much is to the character of Wonder Woman. And more reason why I think they did such a good job with this movie is that's just her character, to where it'd be like, okay, even if the vast majority of humanity is terrible, there's still the good people in the world, to where those are the ones that I want to fight for and trying to make a better world for, because of all the terrible, crap that's out in the world. And I think that was ultimately, like, again, her internal struggle, the words that Steve Trevor gave her, and just having interacted with him and some other, again, good people in the world, that ultimately is kind of what swayed her over. It's because it's like, yeah, that's a good point. Maybe humans don't deserve to get saved, but I'm going to try anyways, because there is still good left in the world.
Yeah, that was a good inspirational point in the movie that I really enjoyed. And that's something I feel like I didn't get with some of the other movies that they have, the other superhero movies.
Mm-hmm.
That one had a big inspirational point of just loving humans and knowing people are who they are.
Yeah.
And her realization of finding out that not everyone's anger is caused by one person, and sometimes that it is the people that are starting all this, was kind of a good, I loved it. It was a good inspirational moment that she had.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I would say it's probably one of my favorite movies of the year. And not just, again, because it's a comic book movie, but I really do think it just succeeds as a movie on so many different levels. And it's definitely a movie that I'm, like, really looking forward to coming out on Blu-ray, so that way I can, pop it into my Xbox and just rewatch and just kind of like, yes, look at how good this movie is.
Yeah, I think it's not just because it's a comic movie that made it a good movie for me. I feel that lots of people around the theater who came out, they had really good smiles on their face talking about how much they loved it, versus when I was going to other movies that I've been seeing, it wasn't so much of that satisfaction that I saw on their faces.
Yeah. And also just financially, the movie, I think, last I heard, was like over $800 million. So clearly, like, it worked for a lot of people, again, not just us comic book fans, who probably saw it like 3-4 times in theaters. But even, like, again, non-comic readers saw this movie and were like, wow, this is really good. This is definitely a step above your kind of typical summer blockbuster movie, or even, comic book movie. And that's why it's just kept going in theaters and just kept bringing in money, because, again, so many people loved it. And again, hats off to Patty Jenkins, the director. Like, she needs to direct more things. Again, whether it's more Wonder Woman movies or just more movies in general, they need to give her, like, the director seat for everything.
Yeah, it connected with not just comic book people, but other people as well, which made it really successful. I agree with that.
And I think that's the true kind of goal with all these kind of genre movies, whether it be a comic book movie or fantasy, sci-fi, whatever it is. Obviously, you want to appeal to that your core demographic audience, but if you can find a way to connect that movie to your average moviegoer and have them kind of spread the good word that this movie's really good, or to keep going to the theater, then I think that's when you really have a good movie, because the people outside your core audience are just kind of like, man, that's a awesome comic book movie or sci-fi movie, fantasy, horror movie, whatever. And not a whole lot of movies are able to kind of deliver that kind of impact where, again, like some other comic book movies I liked, but they didn't really impact me as much as something like Wonder Woman or even Logan that came out earlier this year, where I was just kind of blown away at how good these movies were.
I think it has a lot to do with them showing pretty much what the characters are going through throughout the movie. That's really been making some of the DC and Marvel movies, like Logan, that was good too. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what made those the good movies. It's just the internal conflict that these characters have to go through.
Yeah, and they focus more on the characters, and again, it's more of a character piece than, oh, well, this is a superhero movie, so they got to fight the bad guy, and that's kind of all there is to it. Again, both Logan and Wonder Woman were kind of more like, yeah, we'll have your spectacle with like the fight scenes and action set pieces and all that stuff, but it's more like, what's going through this character's head right now, and how are they doing, or how are they going to get to whatever conclusion they come to, whether it be to, again, save humanity in Wonder Woman's case, or Logan's case, a very personal, intimate moment where he's trying to get this girl he barely even knows to safety. And I think that's really the key to not just telling a good, compelling story in any kind of movie, or TV show for that matter, but to keep this golden, amazing age of comic book movies and media going for several years down the road is just, again, focus on telling a great story, a character piece, more so than, oh, let's just have a bunch of explosions and action sequences.
Yeah, and I hope that in the future, when they're making, more of these movies, especially for the comic movies, that they do focus more on what's going on through the character's head, and they learn from which movies have been a big success versus which ones weren't as good or were kind of at the medium range.
Yeah.
So that in the future, we have these better movies that we can really enjoy, especially in the comic industry.
Oh, yeah. And especially with DC right now, because, like, I love DC Comics, and that's one reason why I was so let down with some of the previous movies, is they have so much potential to be great, and they weren't, just in my personal opinion. And so, like, hopefully with Wonder Woman, they're kind of like, okay, let's tell the solo Batman movie, like, in kind of the same vein as Wonder Woman and The Flash and Justice League and all the other solo movies and 20 movies they have planned. Hopefully they kind of do the same thing as with Wonder Woman, where they focus more on the character than, like, again, the action sequences and stuff like that. Because, again, DC, I would argue, overall have the better characters than Marvel. Marvel characters are just a bit more relatable overall than most DC characters. But, again, hopefully they've kind of learned from the success of Wonder Woman and be like, okay, here's how we need to do the DCEU going forward.
Yeah, and so I think if you're watching and you haven't seen the Wonder Woman movie yet, sorry about that, but
you should have seen it. You had all summer, but hopefully we didn't spoil it too much. Well, no, I was just saying, like, you really should have seen Wonder Woman by now. You had all summer, but if you haven't, hopefully we didn't spoil it too bad. But I guess since we're going on about it, and
there's me who still hasn't seen Spider-Man Homecoming yet, and it drives me crazy.
I really liked it, but Wonder Woman and Logan, I think, will be, for me, two of the best. They're probably the two best comic book movies I've seen in years, actually. But movies is a whole other thing I could go into, because I'm a big movie junkie as well. But since we're going on about an hour now, I'd say we start wrapping this discussion up. So, are there any blogs or content you're working on right now you want to promote to the people?
Yes, there is. So I do have a series that I did about one time, which was SBC, which stands for Science Behind Comics. Mm-hmm. And it's where I kind of explain how some things are possible or not possible in comic books. Mm-hmm. And then I have a new one that's coming out, which is called The Secret Speedster, where I reveal that there is one of them in the Justice League that could possibly be really fast, and we just don't know it. based on their origin.
Really?
Like, in a race against Superman, they will win.
I'm intrigued.
So there's one, if not two of them actually, that could beat Superman in a race. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on. And another one would be on Batman's utility belt. I'll have a challenge about that, pretty much, where you get to pick anything that you want as if you had a utility belt and you're a superhero, and come up with a story and how would you use it.
Which I imagine everyone will have the shark repellent spray in their utility belt, because that's just a must. Everyone has to have shark repellent in their belt, in their car. And I've got a can of that in my car, every day. And I don't even live near the sea. Just on the off case that, like, there's a Sharknado or something like that, I can just spray my way to safety.
And then finally, the last one would be sort of on a topic that we touched earlier when I was talking about my introduction to comics, which was the shows that started it all, where I explained some of the shows and how they get people, young people or older people, into comic books.
Fantastic. I imagine, like, are you working on all three at the same time, or is one of these or all three going to come out within the next few days, weeks?
So one of them I'm almost done with, which is the SBC one, and then the other one, which is utility belt, that's going to take a little bit more time, so that's probably going to come out in about 2 to 3 weeks, because I'm going to finish up the other ones, and then shows that started it all, you'll probably see that about next week.
Cool. So, there you go, people. Keep your eyes on all three of these amazing topics that you'll be doing blogs about. I don't really have anything comic Amino related things to promote aside from here, of course, the YouTube channel. Continue to like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. Really makes me feel good that I'm actually doing something productive that people actually enjoy. Do you have social media you want to promote, like Twitter, Instagram, anything like that?
I do have an Instagram, no posts yet, but if you guys can, give me a follow.
What is your Instagram, your username on here?
It's Erisa Neptune.
Okay.
The same one.
So, yeah, go follow her on Instagram. You all can follow me on Twitter at IrishmanJake, all one word. Basically the same username is on here on Comics Amino. And if for whatever reason you want to hear more of me talking, you can check out my YouTube channel, Pasty Pal Productions, where I do movie reviews and host a podcast where we talk about movies, comics, TV shows, music, a little bit of everything. And then my other podcast, which you can find on Podbean, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Shogun's Gateway to Anime, which is all about anime, and more things to come here on the YouTube channel. Of course, I'm actually in the process of bringing in some help to kind of do better editing, because my editing is not very good, as I'm sure you all have been able to tell so far from the videos I've uploaded. And hopefully they'll have some cool graphics and an intro video. To again make this look way more professional because my editing skills are that of a small child. So be on the lookout for all that stuff, people. And until next time, everyone, cheers.